There we go. There's that button. All right. So we're nearing the end. We're past the halfway. We haven't lost anybody yet, which is good. And so again, from last week, we did a lot of positioning. We did the crease. We also had the business meeting last night as well. I know for a new person, a little tough sometimes to follow, especially when we get to the actual financials and things like that. And again, we purposely guard you a little bit as new officials from all of that technicality, right? That I kind of discussed last night in terms of, a lot of editorial changes within the book. We're teaching you that way anyway, so to not get bogged down. And again, just understand that it doesn't fundamentally change how we're looking at the game or how we call stuff. And that is one of the big items we're going to go through today, which is, your judgment when things happen. And just like in all sports, when we get to fouls and when we get to contact, regardless if it's basketball or football, lacrosse or hockey or even soccer, it's very subjective. It's not always very objective of a call. And again, it's based on context and other things. So we're going to go through that tonight. We're going to kind of hit it two parts, the penalty enforcement, which is how do we actually decide what kind of foul is it and how do we report it? So we're going to really spend time on kind of the reporting side and what fouls are and how they break down in lacrosse. And then how do we go about kind of getting them into the game and adjudicating them is the correct term. And then the next week, again, we're going to go through technical fouls, which again, for us, and we'll explain this, that is the lower end of fouls. So for basketball officials, you have to kind of get out of your mind that the tech foul is the worst, right? Is we don't have that. The tech foul is the bottom end of the period, the most common foul that we're going to have. So again, just rest of the way next week, we're going to have technical fouls. And then again, we're going to have our clinic, which is on Sunday. And then we're going to go through March 10th. We're going to do recap for the first half. And then the entire membership's going to join us for the test to go over. And again, we go through all 50 questions. So you're able to write them down and get all the answers. And again, the idea is not just simply so you get 100, but that way you get a chance to actually go through them, each question. So there's no hangups or things of that. And then if you feel you want to sit for the NCAA and do the college one, you're more than welcome to do, and we'll do that on Monday the 17th. With that said, if that works. Just again, this was in from last year. This seemed to be a little bit of sticking point, but just as a reminder, I'll let a whole bunch of more people in. There we go. As a reminder that every time we have some kind of turnover or change of possession, so when somebody picks it up, we're going to start different counts, and there can be scenarios where we restart those counts, as we said. And again, your rule book's your best friend in understanding because some of those scenarios get a little wonky. But every time we have a change of possession, we're going to start one of two counts depending on where the ball is. So if the defensive team picks up the ball in their own defensive half, again, we start a 20-second count. If the essentially the team who is defending, right, within their offensive half picks it up, and if they're outside that attack area, we actually start a new 10-second count. And so if that defensive team then completes the 20, then again we start the 10 until they touch it in. Now we have over and back in effect, and they're restrained to now what is called the midline. And then they simply get to play for as long as they need to score outside of, again, we have this mechanism called stalling. And that is if we feel that the team is truly not trying to go to the net and they're simply just trying to kill time. Again, a subjective discretion within the officials, and your veteran official is going to generally not only make that call for you, is also going to talk it through with people, but again, trying to get the team to move it forward. And again, it's subjective, where if it's 20-0 and that team is trying to kill a few seconds, so they're not going towards the net and turn the ball over and running up the score, we understand that. So again, just to go over the timing counts on things, that was one of the items last year we spent a little extra time on. Again, tonight, we're going to go through penalty enforcement. We're going to go through personal fouls. Dick is going to send out, he's in charge of our mentor program. And so each one of the new officials is going to get assigned to a veteran official. And again, not that you can't contact Dick, myself, or John at any point throughout the season, but we purposely match you up so that way, A, you get to sit next to somebody at the clinic, as simple as that sounds. B, you get to do, we're going to try to do at least one game. Sometimes we could do two or three, depending on the way the schedule breaks down later in the season to ref a game. And that mentor might come observe you as well. And then you just have another person to call and ask questions and do check ins and things like that. Um, so again, we'll give out those mentors in about a week or so. And yeah, and so to kind of start the learning objectives for tonight, again, we have two types of fouls within the game of lacrosse. And then we kind of have like three is all of our conduct and our sportsmanlike, but even those fouls fall underneath both technical and personal. So if you have to kind of visually think of three, where it's we kind of guard conduct in its third little area, that's fine. But according to the rule book, we only have two kind of categories of both technical and personal. And technical is the not only the most common, but is the least offensive, so to speak, because they're fouls against rules most of the time. And so it can be something like, the the ball is loose. I have a spelling error there that I didn't fix from last year. That should be, oh, lose the ball. Excuse me. I think I did that last time too. You essentially in that foul hierarchy, possession is king, right? Within the game of lacrosse and in most sports. So essentially, as we commit a technical foul, you simply lose the ball and lose possession of the ball. If the ball is loose and nobody has possessed it, so in the first one, if you currently have the ball and you commit a technical foul, you no longer get to have the ball. If the ball is loose and nobody has possessed it, we award it to the team who got offended, right? And then on the flip side, if your team does not have the ball, so you do not have possession. We cannot simply give possession to the team who already has it. So now we go into that team having to serve penalty time. And again, if you think of hockey where we have power plays or man up opportunities, we call them lacrosse, the player actually sits and serves time out, and the team then plays a man down for just 30 seconds. All of these technical fouls are what we call releasable, which means that if the opponents score a goal during this time period while they're man up, the penalty gets to be released. And so they don't serve the entire amount of that 30 seconds. If a goal is scored, we then go to all even, and we essentially just start with a face off. That player comes out of the box, and that goal is essentially, the the ultimate goal of why we had that player come out. And then again, that team is no longer disadvantaged in that manner. So again, we're going to go over those next week. But again, it is important to kind of understand when we kind of go through these, because when we get into enforcement, it gets a little tricky. And especially because we do different things, including throw flags. And we have one tonight, and we're going to go through all of our signs and things like that. And then we have a personal foul, which the easy way to understand, it's a foul against a player. When you're usually making some kind of contact that is illegal with that player, that's when we're getting into personal fouls. And so we then have a range of minutes we can give. Some are very well defined, some are not very well defined, where it says you can give 1 to 3 minutes. That's a lot of different thresholds and subjectivity to go through and figure out what on earth am I supposed to do, right? And so again, it's based on context of the game. Is it the player's first penalty? Is it the beginning of the game? Where are we going? How egregious are those things? So we have, again, a severity meter that we have to learn as officials, and we also have to calibrate it based on that game, as we said. And so it can go 1, 2, or 3. There's also, depending on the type of foul and what actually occurs, we could have non-releasable or releasable. Non-releasable refers to, again, if there is a goal scored, that player actually stays in the box. And again, I just use hockey as my example. That 5-minute major, you can score as many times as you can within that penalty. We also have releasable fouls within the personal fouls to kind of confuse you a lot, right? And those are kind of your run-of-the-mill fouls that simply, if a goal is scored, the player is released from the penalty box and both teams are even. I think I have questions on this so far.
What do you
All
mean,
right, go ahead.
what do you mean the technical foul is against the rules?
So it is things like, as we get into them, I use the idea of they can be against somebody like pushing, right? Could be obviously against a body, but essentially you are committing a rule foul. So something like offsides is that you have the rule is you have to have
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha.
certain amount of players in certain area. You did not pick up the ball within 5 seconds. There's a rule against that. You make contact with somebody from behind, right? So the rule is you have to hit them from the front, if that makes sense. As versus a truly personal foul is I'm hitting you with my stick in your body. I am hitting you with my elbow. I am hitting you below the waist, right? Almost all the personal fouls deal with some kind of illegal contact for the most part. And we'll go through there's a couple other ones. But then that rule foul is something, right, where it is technical in nature. So take out again the basketball, the idea of the tech foul, but technical in terms of the rule states this has to occur in this fashion. You didn't do that. It becomes a very that ticky-tacky technical jargon, if that makes sense, to try to explain it in a different way, as versus personal meaning person on person. That's how I break it down in my head, at least.
Thank you.
hmm Good question. So when, and we kind of discussed this last week, and again, I won't go overly through this, but again, the idea of when fouls are fouls in any sport, right? Is you just know when somebody gets mugged, it's generally a foul, right? In any sport, somebody gets blown up. I always say it's a noise test. Is if your internal monologue makes a noise, or if all the crowd makes a noise, it's probably a foul 9 times out of 10, right? Is just when you instinctively watch any sport, even if it's the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MLB, and you see two people collide and you go, whoa, it's probably a foul just because you made that noise, right? It's not exactly how that works, but it's that idea that we know, the big ones when we see them. Again, where's our threshold is always the question we get with newer officials, especially who came from coaching. It's a tough question. There's no dead set threshold when we have it. It's again the nature of the game. If we start out, and we can start out, the first hit of the game could be really brutal and illegal, and we go right to disqualifying that player or expelling that player from the game, potentially, depending on what exactly they do, right? But we also have, what we call bar setting fouls, where it's the first foul of the game and it's kind of a 50-50, and we know it's going to be a competitive game based on the two teams that are playing, and we might not think it's a foul for that level, right? And we even within those levels, a really good JV game might have a higher level than a bad varsity game, and vice versa. And does context matter, as we said, right? Does intent kind of matter? Is what's going on in the game, right? If one player gets mad and hits them with their stick a little bit behind the play and it's kind of a love tap, maybe we do let it go. But if if we know emotions are about to boil over and this is the second or third time this player has done it, we probably need to escalate, our response to that action. So again, all of those things are important. Again, we appreciate the fact that all of you on this call have officiated at some point as well. Again, it's understanding and appreciating that, again, we have to get that temperature of the game. So as we just said, and we went through this last week, but again, the idea of, we are not coaching the players, but we can do a really good job of walking them away from the edge if we need to, is that we don't simply have to throw flags every time. In the beginning of this matrix, as we get through the game, and it's understanding that we can try to communicate and we can try to police and we can try to warn them and we can try to get through them. But then other times, again, when it's that really brutal hit that is completely illegal, we don't have an option in our bar gets set where the bar gets set because again, it's part of the game and it's part of officiating and understanding that sometimes our hands are tied and when things are really bad, we just have to go to that flag and that other mechanism. And as we said, we have flashpoints. And again, you'll learn this if you're not super familiar with lacrosse. But again, think of high emotion plays in any sport. When somebody scores, right, is that it's a bragging right. And you see it all the time. We had it in our game on Saturday where a team was up by a whole bunch. And sure enough, one kid said, I can take you. I can take you. like, oh, just stop, right? And then sure enough, that player gets absolutely roasted on a one-on-one on defense. They score, and you know that offensive player is going to turn around and say something back to that defensive player, like, why'd you call me out, right? You just know it's going to happen. So getting there, even physically in between them, and not saying touching them and grab them, just standing there, right? And knowing that they're about to say something prevents. It's that idea of the teacher, right? The chance of somebody doing something stupid while a teacher is standing and looking at them is a lot lower than if the teacher's on the other side of the room not paying attention. Plays by the crease, right, can get physical. There's goalies involved. People can get by feet. Same thing with stoppages of play. When we blow a whistle, people like to take liberties because they think we're going to stop looking at them. So we need to continue looking at them. As the players cross to the bench, as we said, substitution areas can get a little dicey, and especially after big hits. And we see that in every sport is that somebody kind of gets hit really hard, and there might be a response from the other team. Again, we went through that situational awareness next week, so I'm going to skip it. Same thing along with the coach behavior. And again, we'll spend a little bit of time this week or next week going through coach behavior and how to manage the game and things of that nature. But as we said, and so again, this is a repeat, but there's three types of personal fouls, right? There's illegal contact, which is mainly what you see throughout the entire game. I would, venture to guess that this is going to be 80 to 90% of your personal foul calls are going to be contact based. Conduct, again, if we can try to avoid those, not saying that we have a choice sometimes, but again, trying to get cooler, heads to prevail, staying calm ourselves. We've all, including myself, you get really hot under the collar. Somebody makes a comment and you're just tired of it, or you had a bad day, right? That happens too. People forget that we're human beings and that we have days, right? And sometimes you're already at your max capacity before people make dumb comments or say stuff or insult you and things like that. And then again, the illegal equipment, it's going to deal with the stick itself as we had gone through the proper proportions of the stick. So again, those are by far less in nature. These are the ones we're going to spend our time on tonight, where again, all contact based, where it's cross check, right? We have a legal body check, and we're going to go through that. Checks that can involve the head or neck. We also have defenseless players within the high school rule book, slashing, tripping, and unnecessary roughness. Questions so far before we go through how we do penalties and then what penalties actually are? Cool. So we again have to determine when we have fouls, and we will again go through this. I'm going to combine both technical fouls and personal fouls within this portion of what we're talking about, because this is by far what gets the most confusing within the game of lacrosse for officials. Because depending on the foul and depending on the state of the ball, we have different actions and different things we have to remember. And again, in your moment, you will probably mess this up the first time, the second time, maybe even the sixth, the 15th, and the 30th time that you throw a flag or you have a foul. This is the most likely chance that you will mess up during your games because it gets very confusing very quickly. So, in the event we have a loose ball, meaning the ball is rolling around on the ground, is the easiest form of a loose ball. Nobody has picked it up, right? It's currently rolling around, and we have somebody slash or hit one another with their stick, and that is now a personal foul, person to person foul. We have this wonderful thing called a yellow flag, right? And because the ball is loose, and somewhere in here is my whistle that I can't find, but I will dig it out in a half second here. And so because the ball is loose, because we have a personal foul, because we have an escalation point, we throw our flag. So what we yell is flag down, and we take our flag. And again, we'll go through it in a clinic, but the idea is once you have it either in your pocket, some people like keeping it, or others like tucking it underneath their belt loop, and I'm one of those. I like to pull it down, and then I throw it up in the air as high as I can. And because again, we're loose, then we have an immediate whistle that then kills play. And so that's our first type of loose ball foul. We then get into, we have a loose ball foul. And let's say one person pushes the other player from behind, which creates an advantage or a disadvantage. we then have this wonderful thing called a play on. And so we entitle the team who got offended, so the team who got pushed, a chance to try to pick up the ball. And if they can pick up the ball within 1 to 2 Mississippi, and I'm not joking when I say 1 to 2 Mississippi, if they can pick it up and try to gain it or restore their advantage and continue play, we don't have anything wrong with that. So we say play on, and we allow everybody a chance to hear that nice and loud. We have our hand up. And then if that team who got pushed picks up the ball, I yell color. Some people also yell the play on is off. I think it's very wordy in my opinion. I like just calling white ball or white if it's the team that has possession. So that's by far the most confusing. We want to give that team the chance to pick it up. Now, the second part of that is if that team doesn't pick it up, so the ball is down, the kid gets pushed, 1 Mississippi 2. Now we blow a whistle, tweet, 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 tweet. I had a loose ball foul. That was a push. It is going to be white ball. White gets to pick it up, and then we blow our whistle in again. So we're giving them a small chance to continue on the play. So that way we don't disadvantage them again in case they were going to the net or had a chance for a scoring opportunity. If not, we simply reset the play and we give them the ball. Questions there?
Rob, is the 1 2 second like a newer thing? Because last year I was questioned on how fast I was literally stopping the play-ons.
In so there is a difference of opinion. I am with 100% in the school of thought in the NCAA, and I'm also trained there because, and this is going to get a little bit in the weeds on an answer, but in the NCAA, so everybody who's just doing high school kind of earmuff right now and don't listen to me very well, right? But in the college game, is that when the technical foul happens, we reset the shot clock. So the difference of calling that foul, right, and potentially blowing your whistle at 61 to 60 is 20 full seconds of difference of shot clock for that team. And that is a massive difference, not necessarily in the first quarter, but in the fourth quarter, that 20 seconds could be the remainder of the game, believe it or not, when that foul occurs. So we are trained at the college level that as soon as that foul happens, if that kid does not pick up that ball within that quick, you blow your whistle and you kill it and you allow because we want to get that shot clock right. Now, on the high school is I say 1 to 2 seconds is my golden rule in my own brain. I try to slow it down just a little bit to give them a chance, but I've never seen anything good happen in my entire career when that play goes on 3, 4, 5 seconds. What generally does happen, in my opinion, is we have a play on, that kid's on the ground, that kid gets mad, the kid gets up and swings the stick at the other kid because you didn't blow the whistle. Now, I'm taking that kid to the penalty box instead of giving him the ball, right? And we have a little bit more that goes into that. And for the sake of this answer, I'll leave it at that. But I don't want to disadvantage that kid who is now hot because he got offended, right? And he doesn't think you called that foul. So I try to keep them short. And again, I haven't seen anything that happens where it goes on 5 or 6 or 7 seconds where that team eventually gets it. And again, depending on the level, right? And again, you got to remember if they are young or they are in the JV and the ball's on the ground to begin with, right? And there's a reason that it's on the ground a little bit longer, is the chance of them picking up and going is also a smaller percentage, right? That's not offended saying that they're bad, but again, if we can pick it up and reset it, it's probably better for the game because you're getting it into their stick, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I jump in with just a
Of
couple?
course. Of course.
First of all, if you end up blowing the whistle instead of letting the play on go on, most of the time at the lower levels, it's fine. It's totally fine. And think about where the ball is in the field. Let's say it's in the defensive half, right? And there's a push and it's going to go to that team that's trying to clear the ball, right? The team that's got a long way to go to the goal at the other end. How much advantage do they really get if they're able to pick the ball up quickly? For the lower levels, not much, being that far away from the goal they're attacking. So if you kill it too early, again, it's not the end of the world. When would you want to make sure you gave it an extra second or two? Well, now a team's got the ball in the attack box and it came loose and they got pushed And maybe in that second or two, a player very close to the goal could scoop it up and shoot it in. So then, that's a case where you know, don't want to blow the whistle too quickly. But most of the time at the lower levels, if you do blow it quickly, it's not the end of the world. And if they're really far away from the team that's going to get the ball from the goal they're attacking, not a lot of advantage.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Excellent question. So now we have a team in possession. So if the team A has the ball and there's a personal foul against team A, right? And so if team B now hits team A, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. Team A has the ball and team A then commits a personal foul. So if team player one, I have the ball, John's on my team, and John is now mad at Andy, and he decides to slash Andy away from the play. I am now again throwing my flag nice and high in the air, right? And then I am blowing my whistle because the team that has offended has possession. So the possession is one of the qualifying factors that ends this, what we call slow whistle flag down situation. In this scenario, it's not a slow whistle, it's an immediate whistle because, again, the team that has made the penalty has possession. On the flip side of that, when we have a technical foul and the team is in possession, same thing, we just simply blow a whistle. The most common of these is when we see something like an illegal screen or an interference, right? I have the ball, John sits a very bad pick and let's say sticks his leg out and knocks Andy off of his path. Just like in basketball, we got to be stationary on that pick. I immediately blow the whistle. It's simply a turnover. Again, remembering that my team has possession. If I have possession, I then lose it. And that's simply the penalty that's given. Quick questions on this part?
Can I add something on the moving picks
Yeah.
that drove me up a wall as a coach? So like the leaning or sticking the elbow out or any sort of movement during contact of that pick is a moving screen. So I know a lot of times there's some leaning or an elbow sticks out and it doesn't get called. That always drove me up a wall. So I just wanted to highlight that one.
You are totally good. I am predicting that your first game will last about 4 hours, at least, maybe 5.
No.
I think you could easily see, depending on the level of the game, right?
Yeah.
Is some games you could probably see
at a varsity level, big time.
Yeah, you can, and I say at college, you'll probably see 50 to 60 illegal picks in a game, and I'm not joking. And we'll call maybe one, because again, it goes back, and we'll get into technical next week. But it's a really good question. It comes to that advantage disadvantage, right? If it's a slight bump, if it's slightly moving, if the defender doesn't, and this is
getting hit,
right?
That's nothing. But if they're leaning into it, I've seen
Yep.
them.
I agree. So it's always that advantage disadvantage, but yeah, super good point. I agree. Is that's always one of mine where again they're tough, they're super subjective to your point, like they do become subjective. So then if our team is not in possession, so if we're the defensive team, the other team has the ball and we go through the same thing, a personal foul. So let's say John is no longer on my team and then I slash John, right? The foul is on me and my team doesn't have the ball, so we simply throw our flag and we allow the play to continue. Now we're in a flag down, FD, slow whistle, FD, SW situation, as the rule book calls it. And we're going to get into what then ends those situations. But we throw a flag and we can play for almost the end of the period most of the times. Similar again to hockey, that delayed call where you see that official have their arm up and it might be a long time, and that's okay. On the flip side of that, same thing. We have a technical foul, right? So I now, again, John is running to the cage and I now push John to that point, or I hold him. The same thing happens. Again, my team does not have possession of the ball. The other team does. I can't lose possession, so I have to throw my flag nice and high in the air. Same flag down, slow whistle situation in both of those. So it becomes very nuanced. This is by far the toughest thing our officials struggle with outside of blowing your whistle for the first time, especially on the first goal. This gets very bogged down in your brain a lot of times, and that's okay. And so again, as you get through it, you'll understand it. And
Let me
so,
let me
go
throw
ahead.
in one thing before you get into that. So just in summary, if the team that has possession commits any kind of foul, immediate whistle. I'll say it again. Team in possession commits any kind of foul, personal or technical, immediate whistle. And secondly, if a team commits a foul where a player is going to be having to serve time, you're always going to be throwing your flag in that situation. Now, there's an exception sometimes when flags get wiped off for certain reasons, which we'll get into. But in general, if a player is going to be serving penalty time because of what happened, you're throwing your flag, whether it's live ball or dead ball.
Excellent point. So now we are in this scenario, as we said, we're in a flag down, slow whistle, right? We're going to throw our flag high. We're going to yell flag down. And then the key is to remember the number of the person who offended, right? And that's I told the story at some point. That is my number one infamous story of first flag I ever threw. Play went on for 3 minutes. I didn't remember. They had to put the poor backup goalie with a literal cast on his leg and crutches into the penalty box because I had a good partner, right? And he serves. Remember the number, right? You'll have scenarios where it's just tough to see or things like that. So again, we try to get the correct player if we can. We can use that designated player called that in home if we truly cannot figure out who it is. Again, I will do things like, coach, you know who he is. You got to put him in the box. If not, I'm going to take your attackman, right? You're in home, and they generally get the right person. Sometimes you also get lucky. You miss the number, and that players are already trotting off because they're used to being in the penalty box and they're already going towards the penalty box for you, and it makes your life easy to know it. So then when do we end the slow whistle scenario?
One more jumping in here. Some people like to just say the number out loud very quietly after they throw the flag, just to kind of get it into their brain. 15 white, and go on.
So we have this acronym called GOODIES that allows the flag down, slow whistle scenario to end. They are in order of what generally happens the most. So one of the most common things is a goal is scored. When the goal is scored, we always blow the whistle. We always blow it. As John said, if we have a personal foul, and that's what we're talking about tonight, personal fouls always serve no matter what, even if a goal is scored. A technical foul, because the goal is scored, we feel that is the additional advantage that the team gets. We are now wiping out that penalty time. And so we say the flag has been waved. But in personal fouls, that player still serves. So think basketball, that's the end one, if you will. And so if a player gets slashed on their way to the goal, we throw a flag, they score a goal, the player who slashed them still sits out, and that team is down one player. We also kill it if the offense commits a foul of any type that can be technical or personal. And if it's personal, they also serve time. If it's technical, it simply kills the play. And that's it. If the ball goes out of bounds, we always blow the whistle no matter what. As John said, just as a reminder, when the offensive team with the ball commits a foul, we always blow our whistle. If the defense gains possession, right, we kill the play. Again, similar to hockey, that defense gets possession of the puck, we blow the whistle. In injuries, we also blow the whistle. End of the period or equipment loss, which is a little bit less likely, but we do see those. Obviously, if the period ends, we have no choice but blow the whistle. We're out of time. And then in high school, we have a scenario where if we have a second foul on the defense, and the reason why we have this high school rule is for safety. Think of the end of the game, and the team that is down by a goal or two is simply just hammering away at the offense who's trying to just simply kill the time. We don't want really bad stuff to happen to. We used to be able to have 3 and 4 and 5 fouls, and the kids would just get beat up at the end of the game. We no longer have that. We have that second foul, and that kills the play. I'm just going to check the next slide. Yep. Okay.
Okay, unless it's a scoring opportunity, we'll get into that later. The second foul piece. Yeah, there we go.
Do you want to take this part, John?
Yeah, do you want to bring up the Nope,
Did that work?
not that one. It's the
Ooh.
other one.
Nope. Sorry.
Not that one.
Sorry. This one. There we
Second
go.
flag. There you go. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff here, but we're going to try and simplify it. So in many cases, a second flag will kill the play. But if there's a scoring play in progress, that's the terminology they use, then you want to let the play continue. You don't want to disadvantage the team. They've been fouled twice, right? And they have a chance to score. You don't want to take that away. So this is kind of buried in the rule book, and you can take your time and review this, over the weeks to come. And if you learn this well, you'll be ahead of a lot of the officials, some of whom have been officiating for a while. So here's the situation. Team A has possession. There's an existing flag down for a foul. You've already thrown a flag. Team B commits a second foul under the slow whistle. Once there's a flag down, any foul, technical or personal, against that team B is going to be a second flag. You're going to let the play continue if there's a scoring play in progress. Well, what does scoring play in progress mean? Well, here's what it means. It means that team A1 has the ball in the offensive half of the field. So if the ball's in the defensive half of the field, whistle, it's over, assess the 2 flags that you've thrown. But if it's in the offensive half of the field, they've met some of the conditions for a scoring play in progress. The second thing is, once they have the ball in the offensive half, they have to continuously advance the ball toward the goal. They can't go backwards, like away from the goal toward the midline. They can't go way off to the side, right? That's not advancing toward the goal. Number 3, they can't bring the ball past goal line extended once the ball is above the goal line extended. Let me take you through that. So if they've got the ball in the offensive half, they can't bring the ball past that goal line extender. Remember, goal line extend is just the goal line in the cage extended out off to the sides, all the way to the sidelines. So they can't bring the ball back behind the goal line and then kind of bring it around in front. Why do they say they can't bring it below the goal line extended once it's above? Because what if that second flag occurred when they were behind the net? So you had a slash, you threw a flag, they're back behind the goal, and there's a second flag. They can keep playing, right? They didn't bring the ball behind the goal line extended when that second flag was thrown. They were already there, so you're going to let that continue. Number 4, they can't take a shot. In other words, once they take a shot with 2 flags down, that's it. They had their chance. If they didn't score a goal, that's it. It's done. You're going to kill the play. Number 5, they can't allow the ball to hit the ground except on a shot. So there's 2 flags down. I'm passing the ball to Rob. Rob doesn't catch it. It hits the ground. That's it. It's over. Why do they say except on a shot? Because a player taking a shot can shoot it and hit the ground and have it bounce up and go in the goal. On a shot, it's okay if it hits the ground. But in general, with 2 flags down, once the ball hits the ground, except on the shot, it's over. And then finally, there isn't a situation's not occurred that would stop a slow whistle. And if you scroll down a little bit, Rob, so we can see it, these are the things which we kind of went over before. These are the things that would end a slow whistle. If a goal is scored by the attacking team, well, of course, you're going to blow the whistle. It's going to be over. You don't have to think about that. The ball goes out of bounds. You're going to blow the whistle. You don't have to think about it. It's done. A player on the defending team gains possession. We just talked about that. The attacking team commits any foul or violation. We also talked about that. Anytime the attacking team commits a violation or foul, you automatically kill it. So that still applies. There's an injury, and it's serious enough to stop play. We talked about that. Player loses any of the required equipment in a scrimmage area, or a player is injured in the scrimmage area and you're required to stop play. It's a safety issue. Okay, the attacking team requests a timeout. No biggie, right? You give them the timeout. Once you blow the whistle, that's it. Once you blow the whistle to kill any flag down situation, you can't go back. Once you blow the whistle, that stops the play. It's over. You can't go, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done that, and then kind of pick up where you left off. It ends it. And finally, the period ends. Not a biggie. Period ends. Of course, that's going to end it. So there's a lot of stuff here, but some of it we've gone over, and you'll continue to go over just in the slow whistle technique. But there are those special conditions for scoring play in progress. And like I said, there are some officials who don't really have that accessible to them right away. But the more you go over it, the faster you'll learn it, and you'll see it in the game. All right, Rob, how was that?
It was excellent. Excellent. And again, just to recap kind of what John said, and think of it as you don't want to disadvantage that team. They got 2 flags on, against them. There's 2 penalties against them. We threw 2 flags, allow them that chance to score that goal. In that scenario is what we want to happen, right? So if you just think of it in the simplest terms, if they're going to goal or they're near the goal and they're about to go to goal, give them that chance, right? There's no safety issue in that. Again, it's designed to be that that defending team doesn't get a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th foul, especially against one in particular player, is what we want. And so,
Can I just add one more thing here?
yeah,
What happens? Rob and I are doing a game, and there's a foul that occurs kind of in between, and we both throw our flags, right? Is that considered 2 flags? Is it considered 1 flag? If you're not sure, if you think it could be that you're both calling the same foul, just assume it's 1 flag. Don't apply the rule, to end the play because there are 2 flags and it's not a scoring opportunity.
And so to transition a little bit, and this is Dave Pinciaro up in Boston. So to give you a good idea of where his flags are. So the kind of technique, we tuck them in to our pant area there underneath the belt is a good one. Some guys like pockets. Again, we should be buying the black ones as the end, so we actually can't see them. He's got the yellow ones. This is an older picture. You can see he's got 1-inch stripes as well. And so now we have a time serving foul. And so we have to report it to the table area and to the bench area so everybody knows what the foul is. And so that way the scorekeeper can write it down and the timekeeper can release the penalty time. Again, that's the within the rule book, their official job is to count down the last 10 seconds and officially release that player when it's time. We generally use the scoreboard to do that just off of the regular time. We can also tell each other as partners what time it comes out. So if we have a 1-minute slash, I might look at John and say, hey, I have a slash for 1 minute. It's out at 9:10, out at 9:10, right? And it's super simple communication. Some fancy pants scoreboards have actual penalty time and they'll put it up and it's super nice for you that they do that. Sometimes it takes an extra second and that's great. If we don't have that, that's okay. If we're doing a JV game and there's no visible scoreboard, that's okay too. We just want to remind that scorekeeper they have to be nice and loud and count down the last 10 seconds for that player. So when we have a penalty, and we're going to show you what this looks like on the field in just a second in terms of an aerial view of where everybody is. But the first thing you want to do is tell everybody around you, including your partner, right? And again, it might actually be when that flag goes down. Again, we deal with teenagers within the high school game, and they'll look at you, and even though they know they just committed a robbery, right, or a mugging, they might look at you and go, "What? That wasn't me. What? Like, what did you just call?" And you need to tell them, "Blue 7, you're going off. That's a penalty, right? Please go to the box area and go sit down," right? Hey, it's a slash, guys. This is what we have. And then the key is we want to tell our partner in the same fashion we're going to tell our bench, and we're going to again go through all these signals and how we do this. It's called C note. But even as we do it to our partner, we want to do the same thing. So if I have a flag and I'm on the far side of the field, I'm going to tell John, we have a time serving foul on blue, 5, it's a slash, 1 minute. And usually the toughest part, we no longer do the basketball numbers with their fingers. Those are tough to see sometimes, but it's loud. We might be 40, 50 yards away. So getting that number usually takes a second. So try to repeat it. We had the other day, it was windy, it was really tough to hear. And you kind of heard it was 42. And you're like, what was the number? 42 blue. And again, wait, usually the best thing, and this is a perfect example, right? See Dave's face right here of that will be everybody's face when they're listening, right? if this person gives that foul, that might be Tony, who's 64, who literally says, give a nod as your partner. So if John says the penalty, blue 13, I'm going to go, I got it, right? Blue 13 and repeat it back. So we heard it. So we get it right, right? So just those simple verbal and nonverbals go a very long way. Once we get it from the partner, we now go to the table and to the coaches. We're not telling them separately. We're telling them in one instance of what that foul is. We have a time serving foul and we point on blue 7/1 minute, whoever the number was, I forget at this point. Then we might also tell anybody else that's necessary. The coaches might ask again. If you get up to higher levels, you might have different coaches. The head coach might be all the way down the field and they want to get a particular unit on or everything else. So they might come back and ask you, what was that call? It was a slash for 1 minute, coach. We don't have to be mad at them. We don't have to yell at them. It's the number one thing you say 46 times on the field. You might say it again. Hey, keeper, the ball is going to start top left. It is blue 7 for a slash for 1 minute. And then the next kid that comes over, the defenseman goes, hey, sir, what was that call? Blue 7 on a slash for 1 minute. The ball's top left. And then the offensive player comes over and goes, hey, sir, what was that call? And you say, oh my, in your own internal monologue, you go, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my mind right here. But you say, not a problem. It's blue 7 with the slash, ball's top left. Everybody gets it. And then John comes over and goes, okay, we ready? What was the call again? You say, John, it was blue 7/1 minute top left. And you might say it for, just realize that's the scenario that happens every time without fail. So just be prepared for it. So as we said, we have two scenarios. When we want the closest person to the table area in terms of the midline. So whoever's closest to the midline is the person who's going to say it. So as we're running lead left now, this trail is closest to the midline and therefore the person who's going to report it. So if the trail has the flag, they're going to tell their partner and then they go over to the bench. If the flag is with the lead tells the trail tells the table. And as we're doing that, right, the lead should be setting the field. So when the trail is done reporting the penalty, we can turn back and the field is ready to go within about 20, 30 seconds is what we're hoping for. In that scenario, just to give you the other ones, as we said, right, lead has a flag, tells the trail tells the table, lead is getting the ball, getting the players to the ball, getting everybody aware, hey, ball is top right. That might be the lead's whistle. If it's over here, you might take the ball, roll it out. Hey, blue, pick up the ball. Blue, pick up the ball. Blue, it's going to be your ball, side left. Go get it. And again, these terms might be a little confusing, so I'll just go over. We give everything in the perspective of the goalkeeper. We have top, we have side, and we have below. I'm sorry, my brain just did stop working there for a second. Top, side, below, right? And again, right according to the goalie or left according to the goalie. Or I call this up top, all the way up here. Hey, goalie, we're up top. Goalie, we're back left or we're behind left, whatever it might be. And again, we give the goalie a chance to do that. Again, if it is in this scenario, it's closest to the midline, right? So this trail becomes the person who's going to report. So again, the lead tells it to the trail gets to come over and should be giving the penalty as close to this cross, if not the bench area, as possible. You don't want to be right on top of the line because the coaches can't see you. You want to be right by that wing line if you can. If you're a little bit further out because you're mobily challenged, that's okay too. And I love this half a joke US Lacrosse put in. I think it's great, right? As that referee is giving the table the information, you're really praying that your partner is getting everything ready to go behind you, right? Because you want to be able to turn and go to that point, right? Again, even if the ball's up top and it's your whistle, if I turn and give the penalty and I come in, John should point at me, Rob your whistle, we're ready to go on that scenario. Make sense? Sound good? Questions on this?
I like to say the number of the player who has the ball. So I'll say goalie 15's got it, and I'll point to the player. So if there's any confusion, it's been cleared up at that point that you've pointed at and identified the person with the ball by number.
Agreed. tons of different techniques is, well, we might say goalie here if we're standing next to it. To your point, we might say a number who has it. I like indicating, again, if this is a scenario, let's say the ball is here and John is now with the ball, I'll tell everybody, hey, we're top left. And I would go, goalie, the ball is next to my partner. Do you see it? And I'll actually ask a question, right? Where it's not just telling them, and I'll wait for confirmation. And that whole time, I'm going to have a hand up. And again, just as a quick pop quiz, what's the one hand up mean when we're in the dead ball? What kind of traffic light signal?
Red.
What's two hands? I'll give it to Tony. What's two hands?
That's red.
Two hands is red. One hand is
Yellow.
yellow, right? So, hey, John, I'm not ready. We're close to ready, right? Goalie, do you see the ball? It's with my partner top left. Yes, sir. And then we point down towards where we're going. So it's always going to be our left hand. So John knows now our field is ready. This is one of the big things the new guys don't do, right? Is again, we should be waiting for our partner to be ready, whatever that means. So we need to look at each other as partners, wherever it is. And should always either have some kind of traffic signal up or a green light with my arm pointing to the way that I'm going to cover and what goal I'm going to cover and which way we're going. And it all goes the same way. And so again, it just gives you that chance to look at that. If I'm trail, I'm pointing with my right because we're going the opposite way, right? And so we're going, again, as the trail, I'm pointing right to that. Appreciate your pop quiz answers. And so we get into the fun stuff. So we get into the C note. So we should have watched Gordon's video, who really went over it in depth. Kind of see not at this point. We don't have to give an explanation to things, especially if they're kind of self-explanatory. We might give a smaller explanation to a coach, maybe not as loud and necessarily to the table. Coach might ask something. We might give them a couple quick points on why we felt it was a foul, right? But something super simple. So again, we go over, and my personal tip, and I even say this in my college games, is I need to have a mental and verbal cue that allows my brain to just spew out and go to autopilot, as silly as it sounds. So when I get over the table, I say, we have a time-serving foul. That's my personal verbal cue that now my brain goes, you know exactly what to do and you've never messed it up in the last 10 years. You're good, right? And it's that little bit of confidence. So we go, table, we have a time-serving foul. Blue, number 2, we no longer do hand numbers. We just say it out loud. Blue, number 2, / 1 minute. Table, we have a time-serving foul. White, cross-check, or white 7, cross-check, 1 minute, right? And we just go through our cadence as I just mess it up on you. Time-serving foul on white, cross-check, 1 minute. And that's all it is. And sometimes the same thing. And then again, we might give that explanation. That's easy. Are you sure? Coach's hands were far apart. That's it. That's my entire explanation. We don't have to make it a scene. It's not about us that goes on. But again, if it gets a little wonky, we might. Something like blue 7 has an illegal body check for 2 minutes, full time to the head. Something of that nature. That becomes their explanation along with our symbol, right? And I'd probably do a little bit better. Illegal body check to the head. We have 2 minutes full time. That penalty does not release. Things of that nature. And we're going to go through these in a little bit. I'm just kind of making them up off the top of my head. But again, that is our basic thing. The number one thing we got to get across is, again, the exact player and the amount of time. Right. Those are really the things that we matter the most on it. As long as we get the team and we get the minute as a newbie, the other things we'll make sure we get obviously a person sitting down on that. And again, do you call it a slash versus an illegal body check versus a cross check? At the end of the day, if it's a personal foul, it doesn't matter exactly what we call it. You don't have to get overly worried. A coach is going to want you to call it correctly, right? But if we kind of start mincing those a little bit when we first start out, that's okay. So, questions, comments, or anything, and then I'm going to go through personal fouls. We're going to show some videos. All right. So I had to do our video
I was
optimization.
gonna ask,
Go ahead.
so you were explaining between difference between personal and technical fouls. You were saying personal is on the player, technical is like a violation off the ball. That's correct.
Anything, I call it a rule violation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But should you re-say what you meant by like any example of a rule violation?
A rule violation would be if you do not have the correct amount of players on one side of the field, you didn't substitute correctly, you weren't wearing a piece of equipment correctly, you left early on a substitution, something like holding. I think a legal screen is a great one as a rule. Is yes, that's on a person, but as Tom mentioned, there are 7 different elements to a perfect screen. And if you mess one of those rules up, that's a rule violation. As versus you're, and this is a great picture, you're trying to hurt another player with your stick.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so when we get into cross check, the nice thing about personal fouls is they are fairly clean in definitions. Whereas technical fouls, we got a lot of asterisks that occur sometimes. That goes on. We have a lot of asterisks. Personal fouls do not get muddied by anything that really occurs, to be honest with you. A cross check is a cross check, no matter the state of the ball, who is in possession, as we said, who is getting cross checked. At no point can you have your hands far apart. They cannot be wider than your shoulders, right? And you have to go in a thrusting and extending motion, right? And again, those are definitive by the rule book. We need a thrusting, right, extended motion that is with our stick away. If we are close by about 6 inches or so, we don't necessarily have a cross check. We still might, right? But it also depends on what happens to that other player who gets hit. Do they get knocked off the ball? Is it violent and they're injured, right? What actually occurs? So again, within that definition, we're looking for hands apart, a thrust and an extension in that. So when we do our signal, right? That is literally our signal. We say we have blue 7 on a cross check, and we just give the cross check motion. We'll watch this a couple times. This one might be a little grainy on this video. We're going to let it load for half a second. Oh, it actually came in pretty well. We're going to watch again, and we're going to watch the official. I'm not going to comment on it just yet. We're going to watch this defenseman come across. And so a couple things. We'll pause it. I'll go back. We can see it again with the amazingness of stop motion, right? We can see.
Hey Rob,
Go ahead.
would you be able to drop the link in the chat? It's very skippy on my end. I'm not able to see it.
So we have them all. If you click on the slide decks, you'd be able
Oh,
to
it's
pick
in there?
them up.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
All right, perfect.
Yep. And so this one, right, as we can see, is hands are apart. We can see a thrust motion, right? And we can see extension. He's coming off, right? Is again, that player is getting hit by the stick more than anything else, right? Again, tough as the ball is coming down, but we can see the official, right, come in, is going to throw a nice high flag right here. Really good flag toss, blows the whistle, does a great job looking and waiting in case anything happens. He does turn away a little quick for my liking, but stay with the players to make sure nothing else happens here. And you can see is emphatic. Again, we don't know context of the game, but let's say that player's done it 2 or 3 times, right? That I'm disapproving of your action goes a long way sometimes. I don't like it, right? And so again, cross checks, right? Thrusting out when we get illegal body checks.
Let me
So
just
again,
jump in for
go
one
ahead.
sec. And just remember a couple things. Personal fouls, 2 things. 1, you're always going to throw the flag. And 2, the player's always going to serve the penalty time.
Excellent. And then, so again, when we think of legal body check in all sports, we have to be above the waist, below the shoulder, and from the front. The only thing eligible, or the side, excuse me, the only thing eligible to be hit in any sport that we play, we want shoulder, we want chest area, and midsection. That is it. Everything else is ineligible to be hit in almost every sport when we get to it. And so we want players to be in that scrimmage area when they're getting hit if a ball is loose, meaning within 5 yards. They don't get to take a running start. If you're familiar with hockey, that's charging. They're not allowed to take, more than 2 or 3 strides. Same concept of 5 yards. We don't want anything from behind. We don't want anything in the waist. We cannot hit a player who is on the ground. A player who has any body part other than their feet touching the ground is ineligible to be hit. Specifically in both games, but in the high school, we really want to be cognizant of it. You get an elbow or a hand down or a knee down, that player cannot be hit. That is a safety concern. And so, again, we can have 1 minute, but sometimes, again, if they get extra brutal, or again, we see things like players hitting with the elbow, right, or things of that nature, we might have to escalate and go more time. Again, we generally want a player's shoulder to hit the other player's shoulder or the other player's chest, not making head contact. It is tough to body check now. We understand that. Again, the onus in the high school game is on the hitter to make sure that the person getting hit is safe. I know that sounds backwards, but think of same thing in football, is that the defensive backs have the onus to hit that player correctly, right? Same in high school lacrosse. So when we have an illegal body check, we do an elbow. So we start here, kind of down, and we put it up. So we're going to say blue, 7, illegal body check, 1 minute. We'll go over to the video here. Oh, we're on to head and neck. I'm sorry. We're on head and neck. So when this kind of escalates it a little bit, we may have scenarios, regardless of what the actual personal foul is. I feel like there's a little outside of order that I want to do. But again, when we hit the head or neck in a high school game, we immediately go to 2 or 3 minutes. We no longer have a 1 minute when we have a head or neck area in there.
Indirect. This is an older slide.
Oh, this is older. Yes.
Yeah.
My apologies. You were correct. If it is a direct hit, so meaning that the principal, kind of think football, the principal point of contact is the head, we have a 2 or 3 minute. This is old. If we have a scenario where the hit starts clean and slides into the head and neck area, we have a 1 minute foul within that regard. So we're going to watch a couple of those videos. So just to restate that, since John and I are, at least in my head, I'm making sure that we get this correct, of if it starts clean and ends not good, then we have a 1 minute foul. If we have it starts and ends bad, we have a 2 or 3 minute foul. Is the easy way to remember that. These videos should be a little bit better than the other ones. So we'll watch again. Player is going to move down the alley here. And so I'll freeze it on that hit. Principal point of contact. I'll let it catch up just in case. Principal point of contact is in the head. Player's hands are across. This is a cross check. I think more than a legal body check in this scenario. And so it starts bad. It starts in the head and actually finishes in the neck. Starts bad, ends bad. We start then at 2 minutes for that foul. We then have a scenario, again, because the onus is on the hitter in the high school game, that player needs to be eligible and essentially paying attention that they will get hit in the high school game. So we have scenarios where you are a defenseless player or a blindside hit. That player needs to be paying attention when they get hit. It is a lot tougher to get if you are shooting to be in a blindside scenario. We generally say something like if you're getting hit from the side or behind, if it is on a pass, or if you're about to catch a pass, is what we see the number one blind side is. So we call them buddy passes in our game or hospital passes because you're about to put your buddy into a hospital, right? And so if John throws me a pass and I'm looking in the air going to catch that ball and I get hit from this side or even from behind, we have a blind side. That player is not paying attention and not realizing that they are going to get hit. Remember that as you get younger in all sports, we call it, the technical scientific term is called cone of vision. 7-year-olds have the smallest cone of vision. That means when they play a sport, specifically lacrosse, they are only looking at the ball, and this is it. Anything outside of this cone of vision, they don't realize exists in the planet. As they get older, that cone gets wider and wider, and high school players might only have a cone that is this big. When we get to college, that cone goes away, but we are not officiating the college game. So realize what might seem like, man, that player should have known that was coming. If we say that in our head, it is a blindside hit. The onus is not on the player to protect themselves. The onus is on the hitter. I know I keep repeating it in different ways in the same way, but it is that important. We have to protect that player because it is not their job to pay attention to getting hit. Regardless of your personal opinion, that is how the rule is written, and it's our job to make sure that that player is who is not eligible to be hit is not eligible. You will also see it, as the slide says, when they scoop for a ball, they scoop and they look up and there's a player already in their helmet. That player did not know that that player was going to be there. So we have to then, again, escalate the penalty to 2 or 3 minutes. We do not bring this penalty down, right? If we're using that scenario of a blindside or defenseless player, that one stays at 2 or 3 minutes. It's a little different.
If you use the term defenseless player, you can't bring it down to a minute. The only time you're going to bring it down to a minute, again, is like Rob was saying, it's a legal hit and then the cross, slides up. It wasn't intentional that he was going to hit him in the head. It was kind of accidental or didn't have that much contact. Then you can give the 1 minute. But if you ever use the word defenseless, it's got to be 2 or 3. And let me just go through real quick, and you'll find this in the rule book, what they say is defenseless. It includes, but is not limited to, body checking a player from the blind side. We talked about that. Body checking a player who has his head down in attempt to play a loose ball. Okay, that's on there as well, right? Body checking a player whose head is turned away to receive a pass, even if that player turns toward the contact immediately before the body check. So he couldn't see it coming. At the last second, he turned his head and then he gets creamed. That is still defenseless, even though he saw that player, a fraction of a second before. And a body checking a player laying on the ground, that's different than having a body part on the ground. If he's completely laying, or I should say lying on the ground, and he gets hit, that's considered defenseless. It's going to be at least 2 minutes. If he's just got a knee on the ground and he gets hit, that can be 1.
We also have in this scenario, or excuse me, within this rule book, so in high school, we also have targeting. And so targeting, again, if we feel not only from the blind side, but if we feel there is intent that that player is targeting the head or neck or targeting a player to try to injure them, we immediately go to 3 minutes. Now, again, this can happen in our game. I had an official explain it this way, it was really good, where it simply said, we can have a 3-minute foul at any point in the game, in any game we do. Is today going to be our day? Most likely not, but we have to be prepared in case it is our day, and we do have that, right? So again, it happens fortunately seldomly within the season, but any hit can turn into that target. Again, if we're looking at intent, we are looking at intent to injure, we are looking at the way they're going about it. Again, as we said, that player coming across and trying to make a legal hit, but has his hands across, extends a little bit, not necessarily a target. When we're seeing that player travel a long distance to try to injure, and again, that becomes our judgment and a subjective on that, we then can escalate to a target, which can be in addition to, we can have that blindside hit and that head contact. So we start stacking these different elements to get a much more severe penalty.
The earlier slide on defenseless did not say non-releasable, but defenseless player getting hit is 2 minutes or 3 minutes non-releasable. The targeting is 3 minutes non-releasable and can be an expulsion foul.
When do you expel them?
Right then and there. So it would be an expulsion foul. So again, within our rule book, we have two different terms. We have expulsion and we have disqualification. Disqualification is much more common. That means that if a player accrues 5 minutes of personal fouls, not technical fouls, but 5 minutes of personal fouls, they're no longer eligible for the remainder of that game. If we expel a player, that is because, and again, there are certain things we can expel for, such as targeting, right? And or fighting or things of that nature or gross misconduct. Those are now expelling a player. And then again, within our high school rule set, that player actually has to serve a suspension for now up to 2 games within, so they can no longer play based on the state rules. So again, we're not saying we should never get into expulsion or anything like that. We see it much more common where if we have a problem player and they've accumulated and they made 2 or 3 bad mistakes, right? We might go with disqualification. If they made one really grave mistake, and I've had it too, where a player decides that they're just fed up with the world and they just tee off and punch that other player 2 or 3 or 4 times, we're in expulsion. Fighting is an immediate expulsion. As we throw our flag, we essentially wait for that fight to finish, right? The player goes off and that player is again allowed to stay within the team area, but essentially is expelled from the rest of the game at that point.
2 points. One, I should have used the term ejection, not expulsion. Expulsion is what's NCAA. It's ejection. It means essentially the same thing in this rule set. So that's number one. The second thing is, for you basketball guys, think of the 5 minutes of personal fouls as fouling out. They're not ejected from the game. They don't have to leave the area. They just are not eligible to continue to play in the game.
Very good point. And so we'll watch a couple of these. This one might be a little grainy on you. But
Finally cleared out by Oberg. Finds a teammate down towards the offense.
Go ahead.
Does the technical fouls also accumulate into that 5 minute penalty?
They do
or like
not.
The non-releasable?
Nope, they do not. Remember, technical fouls in the game of lacrosse are essentially or almost like nothing fouls is the way I call them, right?
So so technical fouls is like violations or like you said, rule things.
Yep. You stepped on a line, you had too many players, right? Very run of the mill. We give the ball to the other team. Is generally what happens, right? Obviously we can time serve if they don't have it, but just think of that is you don't get the ball anymore. Easy peasy. Personal fouls, that's when we are then going to the foul out scenario because that player is now a danger to other players, is the simple way to kind of think about it.
You also mentioned about technical fouls, though. Does that?
Nope. So again, 5 personal fouls.
Okay, so it's personal. Okay.
Yep, 5 personal fouls. Nope, super good question.
5 minutes of personal
5 minutes, 5 minutes of personal fouls. No technical fouls in that count.
Okay.
So you can get as many technicals as you want. It doesn't count, but you could have a 3 minute personal and a 2 minute personal, and then you are then disqualified from the rest of the game. You're ineligible to play anymore because you've had 5 total minutes of personal foul time.
Gotcha. So you like fouled out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He cleared out by Oberg. Finds a teammate down towards the offensive zone, and it's scooped up by Feldhage, but then taken away by the Panthers. A host of 4 Panthers getting there to him. Big, stiff elbow to the face tight check.
So
finds a teammate
here.
down towards the offensive zone, and it's scooped up by Feldhage, but then
just to again explain, I know these are always tough to see with a little context, but this player, I think white 47, is going to curl out, and we can watch his face mask is looking downfield to try to score. And a new player from black comes out of the bench and creates a hit. This player has no idea that player is within their cone of vision, right? That player is singularly focused down the field as they are entitled to do.
And taken away by the Panthers. A host of 4 Panthers getting there to him. Big, stiff elbow to the face.
And so we'll slow down it, or I'll just keep it paused. This is a Rob all the above foul. We have a player that is defenseless, black player, leaves his feet, throws an elbow, and then stands over the player. We have a whole bunch of things that are wrong. I call that the all the above. Coach, pick anything that you think it was, and I'm going to agree with you. Right? It's all of them.
Big, stiff elbow to the face type check.
We have an immediate flag.
And that's going to draw a quick penalty.
And we can see it from the side, looks even worse.
Blitzing right off the bench was Neil Molitor. And just a blindside hit on Hershey.
Attention to hit the player.
Contact to the head. Just about everything. You can tell that was on his mind, the way he tore out of the box. And certainly
right,
a little hobble is JT Hershey.
Defining everything for us, right? Blindside, we might have head, he tore out of the box. All
finally
of those
cleared out by Oberg,
right? That come into that. We then get to slashing, which is every youth parent's favorite thing to yell. Slash, right? There is, so again, we're going to go over the definition of it. And at no point, I've never explained this to anyone because it is a losing battle, but every player and every parent and every coach feels that if you touch somebody's helmet or their head, that is an automatic flag, and it is not. So I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to teach you the bad way to learn it and the good way, right? And so we're going to go through both. And so slashing, by definition, is swinging your cross with viciousness or reckless abandon. It's actually about the control of your stick. You can hit real hard and be targeted and be okay. And again, within the game, the definition, the stick extends to the gloved hand that is wrapped around. So within this picture, this player has the ball, and we have all of this stick, and both of these gloves are eligible to be hit by this player's cross. Now, the way they're coming in with a tomahawk, I would have an immediate argument that there is lack of control. If that player were to swing from this motion as they're chasing them, very tough, right? So when we have a slash that gets on the hands or the stick, it is very likely a no call. But we can have a scenario where a player hits very violently and very recklessly abandoned, I know that's not a verb and John's going to yell at me, but directly hits that player's hand with intent to injure. That can still be a slash, even though it is considered part of the stick. We see the slash that hits the body or the back or the leg or the head. We can also have a slash. We can also then, so that's the good way of looking at it. You're looking at control. You're looking at how hard the hit is. Believe it or not, again, if that player is just kind of swings and taps the player, we probably don't have an advantage disadvantage. If that player swings hard, we can have an advantage disadvantage, even if that player misses. That player might, I'm not joking, flinch and drop the ball, or they might flinch the next time that player comes near them because they think they're going to get walloped with that slash. So again, very rarely do we see a no contact slash call, but we can have it. If this player swung like a baseball and somehow missed this player, we could still have a slash call to try to control that game. What's the context of the game? Is that play safe, right? When we usually do not see slash calls is when that player has the ball. I use the technical term called the blender, which is right outside the crease, or if you're inside the key like in basketball, or you're in the slot area like in hockey, and if that player goes in there trying to dodge and get through people multiple times, it is a lot tougher to garner a call. It doesn't mean that fouls don't occur and that we won't call them. But again, remember the context that comes in. That defender is trying to defend, the offensive player is trying to go in. You're most likely not going to be perfect with your check. So you're going to see plays where you go inside and you might not get a call, right? Because that player is going in depending on their level, as we said. And that is the most common when you will see that he hit me in the head, he hit me in the head. And so the old term, don't learn this, wink, wink. We do not say it anymore, but we had an older term that was called a brush. We don't like defining what is a brush or a slash because it just makes us look bad and liability wise, but the concept still exists. If this player comes in legally trying to hit, right, and gets them 90% shoulder, 5% chest, and like 3% a little bit of face mask, and the other 2% is in the air because the stick is hanging out there, we're good for the most part. That player is not making a lot of vicious contact to the head or anything else. There's no perfect percentage to that. It's again based on context and what your judgment is. These calls are tough. But again, if it's primary contact with the head, if it's across the face mask, it's on the top of the head, the back of the head, they're easy. When they start hitting portions or the plastic of the stick hits those sides of the face mask, it becomes very tough. And our slash call is just a slash across like this. Questions before we see one? So when you have about 8 flags on a play, something happened, right? And we'll watch this 2 or 3 times. And so again, I know you're trying to watch it, so I'll talk a little slow here. But context of the game. Are they in control? Is that the 4th or 5th time this defenseman has done this? There's no perfect number. We could have a slash penalty on the first hit. We could have it on the 3rd hit. I'll pause on this next one. Where I think we're going with as officials, that we have one hit that was pretty wide. The player is not jabbing. They're coming all the way across. We have a second one we just threw. And now we have one that hits him directly on the back. It's tough to see, but that last one hits him directly on the back. I think that's what garners. And we have 2 or 3 small ones. And then again, we have a player who's on the ground. I would call that last one an illegal body check, if not a second slash. The exact terminology we're using, obviously we have judgment. We can go back and forth on those. But again, 3 flags. At least one of those is time serving. Very tough to hear the arguments from the stands. Well, come on. We'll see another one here on a defenseman. It's not offense or defense. It can be anybody. So it was quick. But as we see, it's the control here. And again, we can think intent. I'm going to purposely pause it here and allow it to buffer if it needs to. But this attackman has a very, very low chance to try to get hand or stick because they are completely behind this red player. So when they now throw this, they're getting all back. And if that official feels it's hard enough, or it lands in that location, we can throw a slash. Again, this is judgment and this is subjective.
Flag down.
What's the context of the game? Right? What's the temperature of the game? Is this the first 10 seconds of the game? Or is white down by 10 and has taken a few liberties already? Has that player already been hit 3 or 4 times? We get to tripping. Again, I think tripping is a little bit easier. It's, again, similar to other sports. I personally don't call as many trips. I think it's a little bit tougher, right? As sometimes we call holds, or if we call pushes, which again gets into technical fouls for next week. But again, definition-wise, obstructing a player below the waist, and it's the positive primary action, meaning the defensive player has to actually engage. What we mean by that is if a player has their foot there and the offensive player steps on the defensive player's foot, that's not the defensive player's problem. Or if the stick is there and we have a loose ball and the player runs over and steps or trips over the stick under their own volition, it is not the defenseman's problem. It just isn't. Is that the defenseman is putting some kind of positive action or action towards trying to trip them, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be intentional. Again, think of what we call, we're going to call it a forklift, a pitchfork, right? The player gets their stick wrapped between their legs, right? That is a positive action. That defenseman put that stick in between the legs, even unintentionally, and that player goes down. We see it. Again, can be after missed checks. The checks go in wrong spots and they hit the foot by accident and they go down. It can be, again, if we feel that the defensive player gets tangled and purposely trips them, we can get into that. Again, it can also be unintentional. That player puts their foot in a spot that then causes, or they step on the offensive player's foot by accident and that trips them. Again, that idea of the defenseman has some kind of positive action, right? And the good kind of area to kind of think about, again, is would that a player gone down on their own? Now, I do say, as you get to lower levels, what ends up happening, and this might sound far-fetched when I say it, and it's okay, but you will eventually start seeing them. Biomechanically, I'm not a biomechanical PhD by any stretch of the imagination, but when, just like if any of you ran track and field, your hands help with your foot cadence, and the speed of your hands actually help your legs move faster, right? If you're holding a stick, right, and you're running, and your hands get hit in a backwards or in the opposite direction, your feet will stop. It's just how your body works at every level. And so when that happens, you will often see a player get legally checked in the hands, their feet will stop, or they will trip themselves. And you will see that player go down. That is tough to differentiate. The lower levels, it happens all the time. The players can barely hold the stick in terms of just their overall awareness, right? So when they get hit like that, they often go down even if their feet don't get touched. At higher levels, you see at high school, this is actually a Fairfield, Connecticut picture right here, and you will see higher levels will fight through that check and be able to continue running. In college, you see it more often. You see less people falling when they get checked in the hands. And again, I'm not saying that we don't call any trips, but just giving you that pro tip. At younger levels, very often that player is running with the ball and that defenseman hits him in the hands and that player falls down and coach starts yelling trip. Nobody hit his feet, coach. Nobody hit him at all below the waist. You hit his hands, he stopped, he fell down. That's a illegal play if we feel that check was correct. In our trip, we cut below our calf or below our knee. We kind of give a little chop down below to signify trip. Again, depending on your mobile or immobile ability, you can squat lower. It's fine. Some people raise their leg if they want to. If they can't, they have problems bending down. That's okay too. But we'll watch a trip here.
Congratulations. We thank everyone who participated. Roll on.
But same kind of idea. We'll watch them one more time. I know we're close on time here, but you can see the first ones, right, on the hands. The player keeps his feet moving. Last one catches him in the hip, makes him fall down. We'll watch one more time.
Congratulations. We thank everyone.
First couple, the player, as we said, gets to keep moving. Last one trips him on down. We have our unnecessary, and I think this is our last one, and then we'll go into a little bit of bonus time here if you want to stay on. Unnecessary, again, is think late hits. These are late. And so, again, I explain it the same way every year, but I think unnecessary are easy to determine besides illegal body checks because you get two different sounds that occur not only in your own head, but by all the coaches, players, and fans make the sound for you. And this is going to sound super silly when I say it, but you will find yourself in 2 months or in 3 years' time saying this in your head. When you see a bad hit in sports, you go, oh. That's the sound you make because you kind of go, like it bothers you, right? When you see an unnecessary hit, you go, you're frustrated and you sigh, right? Because the difference of a bad hit, and a stupid hit that is late and not necessary, Johnny, why'd you do that? And you will hear that in your brain. And that gives you the answer to that call. So we're looking for something that is excessively violent, right? We see it that when you blow up a pick, you see it that it's deliberate and you can avoid it, including it being late that goes on. Or you see something where a player just gets fed up and just hits a player and kind of punches them with two closed fists on their stick. Those can all be unnecessary. The number one variety you will see is the late hit. Hit that is one Mississippi after the ball is away. It's no longer 5 yards, even two Mississippi, and that player does not pull up and still hits them. And we see that reaction. I think this is our last video. We'll watch it real quick. But you can hear the crowd difference. Where that player is about to shoot, he is now shot. He is no longer eligible to be hit. In this scenario, I'll let it buffer for you. And again, that player continues to make that hit well after that play is over. And one more time, I'll let you listen. It's mixed. There's goal celebration and there's a whole bunch of right? It's a sigh. And that tells you what you need to know in terms of that hit. That is more unnecessary than illegal. Maybe we have a blind side in that scenario, but in that scenario, seemingly this player gets hit. Shoulder to the ribs, gets right up, right? It's not 100% determined whether or not they get up, but kind of the idea of might be a legal hit outside of that. We see a couple more.
In this clip, White is on offense, and there's a pick set behind the goal. Watch in slow motion and notice the defender's helmet looks to see the pick, and then he intentionally body checks the player.
Plaster the kid anyway.
The official correctly throws his flag, and this player should serve a minimum penalty of at least 1 minute releasable. In this clip, White is on offense man up. As number 17 goes to catch the ball, he is violently body checked by the releasing blue player. The official sees this illegal contact and correctly throws his flag.
And now again, we can go either one on that, right? It's from behind. It might be, we might consider that an illegal body check, but unnecessary, we're okay too. That player needs to hold up in that scenario. And so with that said, the only one we didn't do unnecessary is a salute from the brim cap onwards. We're going to save this for next week, but we're going to do our penalty relay race and a whole bunch of fun. We get to, come up with all of our different signals to do next week. I am going to stay on for a couple of you asked. I have a little bit of a game film. If anybody wants to, again, go over it, we'll watch that. We're obviously at time. We're actually overtime, so my apologies by a few minutes here. But again, we'll allow the recording to go a little bit. So if you want to jump off, you can. If you got questions, you can ask them now. So that way you don't have to stay on till the end on that. But I'll stay on for 10 or 15 minutes and watch a little bit of game film on a game, lower level college. But again, it gives you an idea of what you'll see in terms of some of those low level varsity some of you might have, or even on the JV level, just simply two lesser skilled teams and what kind of occurs in those games. So with that, I'll stop talking. If anybody's got questions, feel free to ask them, and then I'll jump into game film after that.
There was a question in the chat about when the books will be coming in. They'll be given out at the clinic.
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the March 23rd, that clinic there, I'll be traveling for work, so I'm not going to be able to make that. Just want to let you guys know. Yeah,
that's the on-field stuff. So we have a couple other ones. Are you the one? Somebody's going down with Dick and Fred. Is that you or somebody? There was somebody. Okay, so there's a couple other just to get on the field before that 29th is again check that email. The one John sent has the correct dates on that.
Okay.
So we have a couple different opportunities. So the 23rd gonna have to go, but we have that big one for you too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just won't be there for the 23rd, but I'll check those other ones out.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
I
one.
wanted to see if I won't be. I reached out to Dick about the clinic this weekend, but I won't be able to make it. Is there going to be, or who should I look for if I come to the one tomorrow?
Which one? So are you going with Dick tomorrow?
I don't know. I was just looking at the email, and there's one that says Tuesday 2:25.
Yeah, so those are actual games that Dick and Fred are doing. So I would
Okay.
reach out to him and get all the info for him. So those are games versus clinics. So the clinic is when we get everybody, the entire membership together to teach you guys. And then the games is I don't know how Dick is doing that exactly, but is a chance for you to get out and at least see stuff live. And might have you run with him too.
Okay. And that's March 23rd.
That's one of the outside ones, yes. So one of the actual
Okay.
game ones.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else question wise we got?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because some of the videos are buffering. How do I access the slides for like this class or any others?
Yep. So everything's in that Google Drive, and then so everything's in the new officials, and then in the slide deck folder.
Oh, Rob, speaking on that, I was trying to access the slides on Google. Like I'm on my laptop right now, and the videos don't seem to be playing.
You got to go into you got to go into presentation mode.
That's what I try to do. I try to go slideshow and just like press the space bar or the enter, and then just kind of wait to see if the video is gonna go, and it doesn't do anything.
You might have to do a download of the actual file and then put it in a slideshow.
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yes, please.
Go to the Texas Lacrosse Officials Association video section. There are tons and tons of examples of all the personal fouls. You can just watch the individual clips, or you can watch with the narration about what's going on.
Perfect.
It's really good.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on it right now.
Okay.
Anything else we got? And then we'll jump into some video for you. All right, I shall jump in. And John, if you got to run,
I got a quick question. Real quick, like on penalties, that you may call, like throwing the flags and stuff like that. Do you find that on a lot of them where, let's say, it would be deemed overly aggressive or anything along those sorts, is it mainly like, your perception of it as opposed to, like, do you feel like a lot of those calls are made based on, what you may perceive as being overly aggressive? For example, like, all right, I'm thinking of it from a basketball standpoint, right? You have your PCA and things like that. So if you're in your PCA and let's say you didn't put air on the whistle because you felt like the contact was marginal and that's your area, but your partner maybe might have caught it and said, "Oh man, that could have been a flagrant or something along those lines." Do you find that you face those a lot when you're on the field?
Yeah, is you're gonna have judgment all the time, and so I think one of those I'm gonna do a weird thing and answer your question with a video. And so I'll literally ask you, and again, our options are this is going to be a personal foul. Would you give, when this happens, we'll watch this one right here. Would you give 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, or expel the player on this? And so we're going to follow blue 19. Blue 19 is going to come in. He's going to move towards the cage. What do you got? You only get to see it one time live. So is that 1, 2, 3 or expulsion?
I mean, I would say probably 2 minute. I wouldn't give him an expulsion. I'd probably say like 2 minutes. I don't think that he leaned in it to it so much. Um, it was a little bit of a blind side, but I wouldn't go overly excessive with it.
So, and again, I'm picking on you a bit on that answer. So,
Okay.
so as the coach, you just said it was excessive, not an expulsion. It was a blind side. Well, which one was it?
Wait, do it again. Do it again.
Yep.
Wait, play
And
the
again,
video.
I get full hindsight, right? As obviously I'm picking on your answer, so I'm not doing that to be mean. But again, that's what a coach is going to ask, right? So we're going to watch. We can watch this a couple times. The player goes in, right? And we'll watch it one more. So player goes in. And to your point, right? We get one time to watch that. And so as we go through, right, I'll do it one more time and I'll slow it down. And so we have to go through a flow chart and the elements immediately, right? The player has thrown the ball away. Is that player eligible to be hit? No, right? Are we going to argue if this ball is 5 yards or more than 5 yards away when this player is hit? There's no way on the planet we can determine the exact measurement, right? So we're going to assume the ball is away, right? Where does he now get hit? Does he get hit in the head? No. Does a player come across with a cross check? No. Now, I will give you, this is college, so we don't have blindside, but let's just assume it's high school, right? Is that player aware they're going to get hit? Yeah, that player was coming at them, right? So I think, okay, and he's in the front, right? And he hits him low, but we hit him late, right? And so now we see that player goes tumbling down, right? It almost looks like he threw him, but kind of didn't, right?
Right.
To that call, I'm calling that a super routine late hit, coach. That's 1 minute. There's no argument. Goodbye. Right.
Yep. I was actually gonna, after seeing it in slow motion, I was gonna probably tell you I would probably give him 1 minute and keep it moving. It was almost like they were head on. After the hit, it wasn't like he stood over them and gloated about it. I think like his momentum might have taken him into the play a little bit. So yeah, 1 minute and let's keep it pushing.
Yeah,
That's
right.
my thought.
And it's tough. And again, I'm picking on your answer because I'm allowed to, right? Right. But it's tough. That's the first one. You got to see all that stuff. And then we see 12 go over, try to hit the next kid. He's trying to hit everybody. Right. And you're like, hey, coach, we got to calm this kid down. Now we got a weird scenario, right, where this kid decides to take his helmet off. This is from a few years ago where we didn't have the helmet rule. And this is why it gets crazy, right? This player literally takes his helmet off, talks to this official, right? And again, we don't have any of this anymore. And so the old rule used to be if you were outside the scrimmage area, it didn't matter, right? And so after this player talks to this official, right, this official sees it and be like, this is weird. And then he goes over to the third official and he's like, what's the deal? And guess who this third official is? It's me. And you know what I do? I just walk right by the kid because I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, right? You know what I mean? But to that point, like sometimes crazy stuff happens, right? And again, this is under a very different rule set. It is from like 3 years ago. It is old. But to that point, we now have to both determine what that hit was. We get no replay, we get no second look, and we have to remember all of those elements because at this level, that coach is going to do the same thing I did and nitpick the exact word you use. So if you say blindside, he's going to want a 2 or 3 minute or an ejection foul because that's the rule, right? Just because you used the wrong word. And I'm not picking on you in this case that you used it, but in the greater learning experience of, right, you go over same in basketball and you say, coach, that seemed like a flagrant. He's going to go, what did you just say? Right. And immediately be on it. Right. And so we have to know that context. And then to really go back to your original question of it is judgment. It is subjective. If he sees when we're back, besides all the crazy stuff, just to show it one more time, if he feels that this player, right, hits him, and I'll try to freeze it, hits him right here, and he feels that it's helmet to helmet, and that's the primary contact, that's his right to feel that way and to judge it that way. I have a different angle. And again, this is the benefit of college. You get 3 different views. He's got a view that is very bad because he's blocked. I have a view that's pretty bad, but kind of okay. He's got the best angle. He can see the head. He can see where the ball is. He's got everything, right? But in that scenario, if we're doing high school, this official is way back here at this pylon. So that angle changes quite significantly to that play. And again, what's the tenor and the temperature and the context of the game? Is this in the fourth quarter and White is down by 20 goals and this kid is just trying to get some revenge? This is in the second quarter and we're kind of close and we have thrown, I'll show you. Oh, give me half a second. I just got to share and unshare if we do this. My apologies. I thought I was on screen. And so this gives you the context. We have thrown 3 flags on blue already. Now, again, we don't use the term cataloging, but the blue coach knows it is 0 and 3 is the penalty count. I just saw my kid's helmet get knocked off. You just said blindside. You said that kid took a run at him. Why on earth is that not a penalty? Right? Right? But that's how the coach is going to be, is you got to even it up. I need that penalty, right? Is to make it even. So all of that stuff matters. Again, it doesn't change our call to your point of, you're going to see most calls are 1 minute. Most calls are routine. And the reason why they're routine is because they happen a lot. That's why they're routine, right? And then on the flip side of that, you're going to know and you get the benefit of when we want to escalate to 2 minutes or more, or if we feel it's a hit to the head, we talk to our partner before we go to the table. So you get a second perspective. If it's routine, we don't have to talk because we don't want to talk every time, right? When it's a foul, right? Hey, that was a charge, we're fine. When it's that flagrant, we might, and I don't know basketball as well, but you should converse, right? And get that second percent. Hey, I saw it. I think he got him in the head. And we go, okay, great. I think you're right. So let's go 2 minutes. Are you good with 2 minutes? And you get the choice of saying yes or no, right? And then we get to have that conversation. Make sense on that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but like you said, one of the things that you said was that unfortunately, we don't get to see that play, more than once. It's happening in the spur of the moment. So, keeping an eye on it and making judgment. And then that's one of the things that, coming from the basketball world is I tell parents and I tell coaches, like, a lot of times there's professionals that have to go to the monitor and watch a video several times to be able to get the call right. We got to be able to get it right on the fly. So we don't get that opportunity to go back and, watch it from different angles and so on and so forth. So, communication, I guess, is extremely important when you're out on the field.
I agree. The sharing just died on me. I don't know why. I'm going to try one more time if I can get this up. If not, we might be out of video already. And my apologies on that. It doesn't want to reload for me. I don't know. I'm going to try this. Give me half a second. Let's see if I can move this. Can we see the video going right now? Or no?
No.
All right. It is being super wonky, so I'm not going to do that. It kind of froze out on me. So yeah, so again, it's tough, right? Is to your exact point of you have to see things so quick from angles that are not great, right? As you're running, as you're in mud, as you're already having a bad day, as coaches are yelling at you, you have to figure things out really quickly. And then the last one, that I apologize for it not working, but it's the same point where we laughed on, the first hit of the game, which the first penalty we had, which was super easy call to all three of us. Every parent is yelling, "Are you kidding me? How is that a call?" Right? We flash forward to an hour later, and a kid gets, checked behind the slash behind the play, and every parent is like, "Throw your flag! That's a penalty! Like, you're letting this game get." They go bananas, right? Because it's on the other team, and you're like, if you watch those two clips in succession, you would think every person on the planet is insane, and that might be the answer, right? Right already, but it's tough. It's tough to see that. And again, we have to see all those things. We got to count for 20 people on the field. We have to run the positions. We have to know stuff. And then again, we have to have, and I think this is always the last really good point, we have to have a photographic memory of what happened. And it's really tough to develop that if we don't have that skill already. Of you have to sit back and say, what did I just see? To your point. And again, that monitor point is great. Of pros, you get to see it in 15 different angles, slow down, and you still can't make that call, right? Of you have to be able to see it and determine it. And again, at least the benefit of lacrosse versus basketball, and this isn't a shot at basketball, we don't have to call it instantaneously, right? Unlike basketball, if that play continues for 2 or 3 seconds, you can't call fouls afterwards. We can throw the flag late. We can blow the whistle late. We can get a second in our brains to say, what on earth did I just see? Right? To that point of, why does that kid have his helmet off and is walking across the field? Right? Like, the hell is going on? And it allows you that half a second to recuperate in your brain in order to get to the answer that you need to. And the answer is, you want to get it right. You want to get it fair, right? And to everything you have. So, make sense on all that? That was a really good question, a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah. We got anything else? I'm sorry the video died on us. And I'll stop recording at that